All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Leticia Preciado, and I'm the Parent Engagement Coordinator here at Pittsburgh Unified School District. Thank you again for joining us for this evening's presentation on stress and stress management. Joining us this evening is Ms. Jacqueline from La Clinica, who will be doing this evening's presentation. Welcome, Jacqueline.
Thank you, Leticia. My name's Jacqueline. I work for La Clinica de la Raza. Been there for about 5 years. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. I will stop my video. Okay, so today we'll talk a little bit about stress and its impacts on the body. Okay. All right, so a little introduction. Again, my name's Jacqueline. I work for La Clinica de Raza. A little bit about us. La Clinica was founded in the 70s by master's students at UC Berkeley that were witnessing the discrepancies in health access to people in the Fruitvale district in Oakland. So they started their own public health clinic to address those needs. La Clinica played a major role in the HIV/AIDS epidemic in the 80s and had one of the first HIV management systems in Oakland. We started La Escuela para Promotores in the 90s to start helping our peers get experience and volunteer work within the community. In the 2000s, La Clinica expanded into Contra Costa County and then into Solano into the 2006. And our latest big opening was in 2016. We had the Transitions Clinic open, which helps recently incarcerated individuals transition back into their lives. This is a little map that can show you we have 24 locations now throughout Oakland and in Deep East County and Contra Costa and Solano. We started out offering mental health services, and now we've expanded to offering medical, dental, optical, CEC, and CHE services, and that's certified enrollment counseling, so anyone getting enrolled in Medicaid or Covered California, and community health education, which is what I'm here to do today. So this workshop on stress, it originated in Spanish. It was called AMCE, it's Abriendo Mente, Cerrado Estigma. And that started in 2018. And since then, we've done over 35 workshops, 20 presentations. And in October of last year, we created an English curriculum. And that's where I came in. And since then, we've done multiple presentations at First 5 California with PUSD, and we've also started doing in-person classes at DBC. So really excited to share this with you all, and I hope you enjoy it. So what is stress? Stress is a feeling of physical or emotional tension, and it can come from any situation. So when you're in the car, when you're on a walk, any situation that makes you feel frustrated, angry, or nervous can trigger that stress response. However, it is necessary to have that response for survival. It's our natural reaction to a change or challenge, and it mostly comes in 3 forms. And that is acute stress, episodic stress, and chronic stress. Acute stress is the most obvious type of stress. It's the one we think about when we hear the word, and it's usually associated with, again, a change in your environment. So when something changes around us, whether it's physically on our body, a chemical reaction, something emotionally striking, our bodies and minds are thrown out of their routine, which results in stress. So some examples of acute stress include giving a presentation, running late, missing the bus, commuting to take kids to school or commuting to your work. That can cause a lot of acute stress, loud music, and excessive work. Episodic stress is acute stress, but experienced too frequently. So these are often seen in things that when parents have unrealistic or unreasonable demands of themselves, and things that cause stress in attempting to achieve their goals. And examples include work and school projects. You know, when you have a lot going on at work, or for example, I'm in school right now, balancing a lot of deadlines, also having to collaborate with your coworkers, take time for yourself. You know, that semester is an episode of stress. The holiday season is the best example. November, December, January is just busy, and you're planning with family and organizing things. If you're hosting and cooking, that's I'm sure we can all say like the stress of the holidays. So that's an episodic example, as well as engagements or pregnancy announcements, anything that's going to take up the next few months, maybe, of the planning, the budgeting, making sure everything's in order. These are examples of episodes of stress. So chronic stress is long-term, constant, and unrelenting stress, and it's brought on by extended exposures to stressors. Some examples of chronic stress, you can imagine relationship issues, experiencing poverty, going through a traumatic experience, and chronic illness. And chronic stress is the one that we talk about when we talk about trying to lower our stress levels for our health, because experiencing this is actually dangerous and really unhealthy and can cause detrimental effects to your body. So how do you carry your stress? This is an interesting question because we all experience things very differently and can manifest what we're feeling in different ways. For example, I experience my stress physically. I feel very tense. I have excess energy, the jitters. Some people, the physical manifestation of stress involves hives or having some sort of skin reaction. And there's also the cognitive manifestations, which include, the inability to focus, the racing thoughts, abrupt mood changes or isolation, or feeling unmotivated. And there's a reason that all of these changes are happening in your mind and your body when you're stressed, because of how your body is interpreting the stressors around you. So a little bit of science as to why we're stressed. Your body is controlled by your autonomic nervous system, and it controls your involuntary actions. So it's your autopilot, which keeps you breathing and keeps your heart pumping and, encourages digestion. All of these things are happening throughout the day without you putting any effort in. That's your autopilot. And it's constantly working to maintain a balance between the two branches, which are the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. And the difference between these are those phrases, fight or flight, and rest and digest. So these are the two branches consistently working in harmony to maintain homeostasis and balance within your body. So again, the sympathetic nervous system, sympathetic carries signals that put our body systems on alert. So you can see it dilates pupils, it increases your heartbeat, relaxes airways to get more oxygen into your lungs. So this is saying your body is responding to a challenge and may need excess energy to fight or flight. And your parasympathetic nervous system does the opposite. So it carries signals that relax those same systems. So constrict your pupils again so you can take in what's around you and see better, slows your heartbeat, and stimulates activity of the stomach. It's your rest and digest. So you can imagine how important it is to be able to help your body get back into that rest and digest state after we experience this fight or flight state. And that's where we come to cope with our stressors to get back into that balance. So stress in all forms, chronic, acute, and episodic, it interferes with our body's production of major chemicals, hormones, and neurotransmitters that control those different things that are triggered by the parasympathetic and sympathetic nerve systems. There are 4 types of main hormones and chemicals that we'll talk about. There's serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, and cortisol. So serotonin is a neurotransmitter and a hormone, and its main functions in your body regulate your mood, healing, and digestion. And I call this one the Pepto-Bismol of the hormones because it helps with nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, and diarrhea. But it also helps with healing wounds. It stimulates blood clotting if you have an injury. And again, it can initiate vomiting and stimulate nausea. So when we are stressed and serotonin gets released, it's for a reason. We're responding to a change, and that can be eating something that is toxic to us. Serotonin can help us initiate vomiting to expel that from our body. So our body is working to reach balance and protect ourselves. And that's why we have these hormones and neurotransmitters transmitted when we have those stimulus in that stress. Norepinephrine has previously been called adrenaline. We refer to it as norepinephrine now. And it's the neurotransmitter released at perceived danger. So this one is the attention, alertness, and arousal hormone. Some of its activities are increasing your blood pressure, increasing muscular activity, increasing your heart rate, dilating your pupils, increased breathing, and metabolic activity. So again, when we're stimulated by a stressor, if we're, faced with a challenge, our body is giving more oxygen to our muscles. It's giving us more blood flow to our heart in the case that we need to fight or flight. So dopamine is the neurotransmitter that controls the motivation, reward, reinforcement cycle. So it's our feel-good hormone. It's the chocolate, the shopping, the good stuff. And it's in control of pleasure, movement, pain processing, learning, focus, memory, and productivity. And it's also associated with prolactin production. And that's one of the reasons that when women breastfeed, they experience happiness. There's a dopamine release during breastfeeding. But dopamine can come from anything. It's likes on social media. It's maybe winning gambling or getting gifts or rewarding yourself. So that's the dopamine you experience when you get that reward, and it helps you reinforce those behaviors. So cortisol is a steroid. It's a glucocorticoid, and it's a hormone that boosts your energy so you can handle the stress, and then it helps restore the balance afterwards. So this one is helping both branches of your nervous system come back into harmony after it gets thrown out of whack for one reason or another. It also has a main function of helping control your metabolism. It decides how your body is using your current stores of fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. So if you need energy to have your fight or flight symptoms ready to, defend yourself or whatever it is, your body breaks down those fats quickly to put sugar into your bloodstream to provide energy to your cells, right? So cortisol is in charge of how your body metabolizes those sugars. It's also the other main function is suppressing the inflammation cycle. And inflammation is your body's immune response. The cardinal signs of inflammation, I'm sure, heat, redness, tingling, swelling, and loss of function are the different things we experience when we have inflammation. And that's for a reason. When we are faced with something like a pathogen, if we get a cut, our body is responding. It's our immune response, and it's going to help inflame that area to get the energy needed. And then it's going to suppress that inflammation to make that swelling go down and to make the fever go down. Other key functions include regulating blood sugar levels. It also helps regulate your blood pressure and has a main function in helping control your sleep and wake cycle. So when we experience stress, when we're stressed out, we're faced with a change, our autonomic nervous system kicks in and responds. So when it's responding with these hormones and neurotransmitters, we can experience too much of them when we have stress. When we're telling our body consistently to fight or flight, and we're consistently having those hormones, that's when we start to get imbalances. So some imbalances associated with serotonin and norepinephrine hormones. These can lead to anxiety, depression, ADHD, issues with your memory, and irregular sleep patterns, as well as blood pressure, heartbeat, excessive sweating. Because remember, norepinephrine or adrenaline, that's released. It's our fight or flight. It's what is increasing our heartbeat to get more blood to our muscles. But if we're not in a state of fight or flight, we are having high blood pressure still because we're having those serotonin and norepinephrine imbalances. Dopamine imbalances are also associated with addiction, obesity, hallucinations, and dietary issues. And it can also cause restless leg syndrome, and it's associated with Parkinson's disease and mania. So again, if you imagine, that's our motivation reward cycle, and that's what, the motivation and reward of eating can lead to obesity, or when we have excess dopamine, we can experience the hallucinations and other cognitive abnormalities. And cortisol imbalances, one of the reasons I remember cortisol imbalance is there used to be an infomercial for a supplement that was to help reduce cortisol in your blood. And it said, stress raises cortisol, cortisol increases belly fat, Relacor helps reduce cortisol. You need Relacor. So now I just remember cortisol as being in balancing of your belly fat, which is only semi-true, but it does help to remind you. So having any sort of cortisol imbalances can lead to digestive issues. So when your body is in fight or flight and it is slowing the absorption of the food because it's focusing its energy elsewhere, the food cannot be as well as digested in your GI tract, and it can cause damage, which includes inflammatory bowel disease, or stomach ulcers. Those are all because we're not using our GI tract correctly because of these imbalances. It can also lead to increased blood sugar. So cortisol is asking your body for energy. It's telling it how to break down fats. So when there's a high demand for that blood sugar and that insulin to release the sugar into your blood, then you start having that resistance to insulin and have glucose levels remain high in your bloodstream, and you're not actually getting the energy that you need because there's a constant response to a stressor that isn't there, and you don't need that glucose. So that unused glucose is what is typically stored as body fat because it's unused. Because again, you're not exerting that fight or flight, your body thinks it is. So it's providing energy for something that's not happening. Cortisol imbalances can also lead to heart disease and stroke. Having high blood pressure, because we're pumping blood to all of our body, it can lead to the vessels being damaged from consistently having too much pressure, which causes it to have plaque buildup in your arteries, and that's what leads to heart attack and stroke. So decreasing blood pressure is integral to maintain the health of all of the vessels and arteries in your body. So the cortisol imbalance, keeping your blood pressure high, is impacting your circulatory system as well. And lastly, it plays a major role in inflammation. It's there to protect your body, but having too much cortisol in the blood, it can actually create a resistance in the same way that we can see insulin resistance when there's too much sugar in the blood. We can also start seeing inflammation resistance with too much cortisol. So your immune system goes a little haywire and actually starts damaging the healthy cells, tissues, and organs in your body because it's reacting to an inflammatory response that, again, isn't happening, but your body thinks it is because we're consistently experiencing that cortisol imbalance. And this can cause a weakening of an immune system. And you'll see, so chronic inflammation, that's a term that we hear a lot in the news nowadays. So those cortisol imbalances causing chronic inflammation. These are some of the diseases associated with that. So that includes fibromyalgia, Alzheimer's disease, again, autoimmune diseases, when you're telling your immune system to consistently fight someone that's not there, can cause those imbalances. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, when we have our lungs working so hard all of the time to get oxygen to our muscles, then we start having the different, the branches in our lungs get tired and don't take in oxygen as well and can lead to COPD. Type 2 diabetes and obesity, again, we have all of that glucose in our blood ready to use for energy, but we're not using it, and that could lead to insulin resistance. And the other things, heart disease, arterial disease, the blood pressure on our arteries, irritable bowel syndrome, infections, and it can decrease your immune system to the point of having AIDS. It also impacts sexual function, so erectile dysfunction, incontinence. And then this graphic is showing the combination of these things that we just talked about and what they can lead to, because it's a cog in the machine, right? What our body is experiencing with our disturbed sleep, when we're not eating correctly, when we have poor digestion, physical inactivity, and then we add in the chronic inflammation, that's when we can lead into some of the larger degenerative diseases that we experience. So everything's connected with the hormones in your body all the way up to these chronic inflammatory diseases. So an interesting hypothesis that's popular in psychology, it's called the weathering hypothesis. So it was proposed to account for early health deterioration because of cumulative exposures to experiences of social, economic, and political adversity. And what this is saying is what we just discussed. It is too much exposure to chronic stress And that is the reason that we're seeing people that are more stressed out have deteriorating health faster than their counterparts. A good way to explain this is imagine yourself as a ship. Ships get weathered, right? So some people are in very stormy waters and their ship is just battered nonstop. It's all storms. And you're going to start, your ship is going to start deteriorating faster because it just deals with more awful weather. And a ship of the same age that experiences calm waters is still going to be in tip-top shape. So the weathering hypothesis, we're consistently being battered by these stressors, and it's impacting our health cumulatively. So trying to smooth out our oceans is the goal. So reducing stress, getting our oceans more calm is what can help us reduce those stressors and try to rebalance those hormones and neurotransmitters that have been thrown out of whack from responding to stressors. So the different, the big ones are exercise and nutrition, and those aren't my favorite. You can also ask for help. There's a lot of relaxation techniques, and of course, sleep. So relaxation, this is the best coping mechanism. The relaxation response, which is the opposite of the stress response, it can be elicited by stimulating your parasympathetic branch. So remember, our sympathetic nervous system, when we're breathing very heavy, when our heart rate is going, if we slow our heart rate and slow our breathing, we can trick our body into entering the sympathetic or the parasympathetic state. So we can say, look, my heart rate is slower. You can go back into rest and digest. Because again, everything's balancing inside your body. So you can kind of manipulate it into doing what you want. And relaxation exercise, it can be anything. Anything goes. But again, the goal is just to slow your heartbeat and your breathing and give you a chance to focus on lowering those stress levels and just bringing yourself back into center. There are a lot of really cool basic breathing exercises. I've learned a few within the past I didn't even know about. I'm not a TikTok girl, but I've gone on there specifically for breathing and stretching exercises. And we'll talk a little bit more about evoking the stress response when we talk about anxiety. Also, imagery and grounding exercises are really popular. Just giving yourself the opportunity to focus and visualize exactly what you want to picture in your mind and putting that energy into what you're seeing. It is just taking the opportunity for you to focus, slow your heart rate, slow your breathing, and stretching. For people that carry their stress like me, I carry stress physically. I have a lot of, anxiety inside me. Stretching really, really helps me relieve that muscle tension. I clench my jaw a lot. I feel a lot of tension in my shoulders. So taking 10, 15 minutes to just try to release that tension and be focused on that and work towards it, that can help elicit that parasympathetic branch and tell your body, rest and digest. See, we have our blood flowing, our heart rate's lower. No need to continue with the chronic inflammation. Thank you. Exercise is important in all ways. It's not my favorite, and it can be anything too, but it stimulates the body to release those endorphins and endocannabinoids. And endorphins, dopamine, those are those same things that we talked about earlier. So having those dopamine and serotonin imbalances, exercise actually does help put those chemicals back into your bloodstream, balance those out if they're out of whack. It also helps block pain. And exercise, one of the important parts is also it improves your sleep. So being tired, physically tired at the end of the day can help you get better sleep and more sleep. And sleep is my favorite, and it's the most integral to health. And we'll talk about it in a minute. And again, releasing those dopamine. People say they feel better after they exercise, their runner's high. You can tell exercise is my favorite stress mechanism, cope. But nutrition is equally as important, if not more. Also in our depression presentation, we'll go a little bit deeper into how our body needs and uses nutrients. So again, stress places so much energy on our body. It's pumping our blood faster. It's putting out that blood sugar because it thinks we need to fight or flight. So that takes a lot of energy out of your body and out of your cells. And you need to constantly replenish those nutrients with a balanced diet. And that mostly includes nutrient-dense foods. And very important is thinking about your blood glucose and eating regularly to keep your blood sugar stable. For example, I did not know how important it was to feed your body until I started experiencing fainting, and I couldn't figure out what it was for a long time. And I eventually was taking my blood sugar, and it was just dangerously low throughout the day because I wasn't eating regularly. And that explains literally fainting, having that brain fog. So feeding your body is so, so important. You do things all day, you move all day, you think all day. You need to put that energy back into your body, but the right kinds of energy in those nutrient-dense foods. So sleep is one of the most important things that you can do for your body. Everything inside regarding restoration and repair happens while you're sleeping. So cellular repair, the muscles that you use throughout the day, those are all getting that blood flow and getting repaired while you're sleeping. Protein synthesis and tissue growth. Also, hormone release happens when you're sleeping. So it's really integral to give your body the opportunity to restore those systems. Your brain does most of its functioning at night. It's when throughout the day, all of the brain activity you've used, it allows your neurons to reorganize. So you're learning, you're working on your memory while you're sleeping. Weight maintenance is linked to sleep and sleep deprivation. You have two major hunger hormones. It's ghrelin and leptin. I would call it ghrelin because it's gremlin, because you're hungry like a gremlin. But lack of sleep increases ghrelin, that hungry hormone, and it decreases the leptin hormone, which is what is released when you feel satisfied. And by that, I mean when your stomach and your body is satiated with nutrients, that's when you can release that leptin hormone to stop the feedback cycle of saying I'm hungry. So when you have a lack of sleep, those two hormones get thrown out of whack. So you're consistently getting hunger signals. You're not able to tell when you're satiated anymore because the leptin is way lower. So getting that good sleep is important to manage weight and use the energy your body needs in an appropriate way. Also, it helps with your emotional well-being. While you're sleeping, the areas of your brain that influence and regulate emotion are most active. So it's that point in time where we do regulate our emotions and our memories and do a lot of our learning. And you can see on the right, lack of sleep is associated with a ton of different issues. So trouble with thinking and concentration, the mood changes because again, while you're sleeping, your brain is regulating that emotion, giving energy to building that resiliency. The weakened immunity, because again, you're not allowing your body to restore and repair itself. It increases your risk of diabetes, risk of heart disease, and also can cause accidents. This is one of the most important reasons to get enough sleep. Most car accidents are attributed to sleep deprivation and happen between the hours of 3 and 4 a.m. because it's people that are driving too early with lack of sleep. So just really important to your safety and to the safety of everyone around you, and to be your best and healthiest self. However, it is important to get good sleep. I always laugh when I give this presentation at First Five because I'm talking to parents about like having great sleep and they're like, no, okay. But making your bedroom sleep friendly, that's really important. So when you are in a cluttered space and your brain cannot function on anything other than looking at the pile of laundry on the ground, you're not in a sleep friendly space and you're going to have a hard time relaxing. Spending time in natural light throughout the day. So again, your body's really smart when you're outside and you have this natural light coming in, your wake sleep cycle is in the appropriate place. So when you can get to bed during the nighttime and you keep that cycle correct, then you can get better sleep as well. Avoiding caffeine, nicotine, and alcohol before bed. Nicotine is actually a more powerful stimulant than caffeine is. So being cognizant about not drinking or eating within 3 hours before bedtime. Also, respecting the bed. This one is really important for sleep health. Your bed is a place for rest and sleep and not for other things, because when you tell your body to watch TV and to eat in bed, you're losing that this is for my rest area, and you no longer associate your bed with good sleep. And that leads to the other important part of sleep is setting a schedule and creating a ritual. So having a set schedule is actually the key determinant of sleep quality. Some of the latest sleep studies have said that it's not how much sleep you get, it's waking up at the same time every day, which that's not fair because we don't do everything the same on the same days. So, but it is because of having a schedule. And in the same vein, that can be your ritual. If a ritual can be anything, it just has to be repeated. So if we think about bedtime stories, right? When you put the kids to bed and you have a ritual, you brush teeth, you have a bedtime story. And the whole point is to try and help the child associate bedtime stories with going to sleep. So the goal is to do the same thing for ourselves. And your ritual can be flossing your teeth and washing your hands. Just anything that you do every single night before bed starts to tell your brain, hey, I'm doing this action that usually happens before we sleep. So you're tricking your body into getting ready to experiencing that good sleep. Lastly, asking for help. That's one of the best ways to cope with stress. And asking for help can come in many different forms. It doesn't have to be official. It doesn't have to be in the form of asking a doctor or a therapist for help. Speaking to friends, family, faith leaders, and people ask for help and experience it differently as well. So being cognizant of the people around you that may not actually want to talk about the latest show they were watching with you, but maybe they needed someone to talk to, and just being able to have a conversation is what is helping them at that time. So just being aware of the people around us. And, I really like this graphic because we are just a community. Everyone's involved. We're all experiencing very similar things in our lives. No one is alone in what they're experiencing. So just asking for help. I'm a big believer in ask and you shall receive. So I encourage you to use these different coping mechanisms, and hopefully we can lower our stress levels and lead better, healthier lives. So I have homework for everybody. This week's homework is to build your nighttime routine. Again, it can be anything. It can be doing 10 toe touches, anything at all. But write it down and do it every night. So again, bedtime routine, right before bed, immediately into bed. Do it every night and see if by night 7, you start to feel sleepier when you start your nighttime routine. So just a little experiment, and that is your homework. Next week, we'll meet again at the same place and same time, and we will go into a little bit more depth about anxiety and anxiety disorders, and also the different mind and body therapies and techniques to, again, lower our stress levels and be in control of our own mental and physical health. And that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Jacqueline. So at this time, if you have any questions, please feel free to place them in the chat, or you can also place them in the Q&A. And you can also place your questions anonymously in the Q&A. Just make sure before you send it, you click on the little anonymous box. Or if you'd like to say your question, you can raise your hand, and I can unmute you. And let me go ahead and turn off the recording so those of you who want to do that can do so freely.